Hi everyone, and welcome to Series 2 of the Confidence Conversations podcast. I'm Gail from Enrichment Coaching, and I'm a personal development and confidence coach. My vision is to live in a world where people feel confident to be their best authentic version of themselves every day. I really want to empower people to take action through exploring what I like to call their confidence DNA and how they can enrich it. So my style of coaching is really informal, it's conversational, and it will always be all about you. I'm not all about models and theory, although I do believe they have their time and place. I'm really actions focused, I'm direct, and there's no fluffy stuff involved. And I'm a big believer in pulling up your big pants and going and getting stuff done. Now, I love to make a difference to those beliefs that you have about what you think you can and cannot do. So if you've been thinking about how one-to-one coaching might work for you and you want to find out more, then get in touch through my website, which is enrichmentcoaching.co.uk, and you can find my links at the bottom of each show notes. So enough about me. I'm really excited to be back with Series 2 of the Confidence Conversations podcast with some incredible guests who are ready to talk honestly about them and their confidence. Now, for this series, rather than kind of general confidence conversations, we're going to be digging a bit deeper to understand more about the things that have an impact and the things that enrich your confidence. And remember, there's little to no editing, meaning the conversation you hear is really authentically confident. If you listen regularly, I'd love you to subscribe. And more than that, I'd love to hear what you think. So feel free to get in touch. So go on and listen to the latest episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. So today I'm really excited to be speaking to Tina Jennings, who is our resident, you're my resident right now, resident change expert. So thank you for saying yes.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, Gail. So looking forward to it.
Let's see where we just said, let's just see where it goes. Let's just see where it goes.
You never know what's gonna come out or happen.
No, definitely not. So just let's start by you just telling us a little bit about you and what you do.
Okay. So I'm Tina. I am a wife, a mother to a 13-year-old now daughter,
Wow.
amazing young woman, and of course my little Roxy, my cockapoo, she's in there too. So that's a little bit about my kind of personal life. My life revolves around them really, and from a career perspective, I'm a change expert, as you described. So I've spent 25 years in change and transformation, supporting leaders around the world in change. And when we talk about change, my definition is helping leaders improve cost, efficiency, performance, or culture. So very much on the organizational design and development types of change. So my kind of career has been helping to integrate acquired businesses, working with cultural transformation, doing a lot of organizational design and development, that type of organizational change really. And of course, as part of that is making sure that every employee in an organization, regardless of size, is supported through that change process. So I'm a real human-centric leader of change. Although, I work with leaders to define their vision and their strategy, but ultimately, how do you take human beings on that change journey?
And first of all, just to say, right, if anybody knows Tina and you've seen the pictures, there's absolutely no way you have got 25 years experience because you look so young, by the way. Not that I'm doubting your experience, just like your genes are amazing.
You are now my best friend, Gail, as well as my one of my recommended coaches. It is genetics. It's genetics and probably soft lighting. Let's go with that.
Yeah. I love the HD version on Zoom. I'm all over that. That filter is mine without a doubt. So look, I guess the reason that I was so excited for you to come on was because I think most people come to coaching as a result of change, whether that's that they want to make a change or they have had a forced change on them by a business. And I think there'll be a lot of listeners that will resonate with the, I've been through a reorg, or I've been through a change process. And I think it's fair to say that for individuals in those processes, often it knocks their confidence, because there's a lot around, isn't there? Well, is this personal? What does it mean? Particularly where people have maybe faced a redundancy situation as well, or having to reapply for roles. So let's just start a little bit by us understanding what confidence means to you.
Yes, a big topic, which I know you do lots of work on. So confidence to me is when I feel mentally and physically at my best. So making sure that it's like the ingredients, right, for feeling at your best equals feeling confident. So the more I can spend time on my mental well-being, so making sure that I have time to think, clearing my mind, that might be meditation, yoga, or it might be going for a dog walk, or it's just that time just to process things, and feeling physically at my best as well. So, having a healthy diet, all of those things, having exercise. When I'm looking after myself, I feel that my cup is full. Then I feel like I can serve others, and bring that confidence to the work that I'm doing. But there's also another ingredient in there for me, and that's around values. So making sure that I am in alignment with what's going on inside, like what is important to me, is fundamental to me feeling like I've got confidence. When I'm working with businesses and leaders and teams that are in alignment with my core values, I feel really confident, because we actually connect and we can actually make a huge difference. So for me, I don't know whether I've answered your question, but it's kind of all of those ingredients for me equals feeling confident.
Yeah, and I love this idea of it being ingredients, because I think you're absolutely right that if confidence was a cake, I mean, I describe it as an iceberg, but if confidence was a cake and you make it and it is made up of all these different things, and I think values actually is right at the bottom of that iceberg. It's almost like the first ingredient that you put in.
It's the core. And being really self-aware in terms of the conditions that you need in order to feel at your best. Right, like I'm very instinctive, so I kind of, I will sit there sometimes with a cup of tea and think to myself, I'm not feeling that great today. Like, what is going on? What's at the root? What is going on here? Why do I feel this way? And being really curious, and then thinking, do you know what? I need to get out. I need to go for a dog walk. I need to, these are the things, just that self-awareness thing is really important. And I think that comes with age as well, kind of having a stopping and thinking about, actually, what do I need to be at my best so that I can serve others to be at their best?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's an element of age and experience, isn't there, that suggests that, do you know what? I need to get out of these four walls. I need to create a different space to think differently. And I for one, definitely don't subscribe to this. I work for myself, so I have to be available 24/7. I think if anything, we need more breaks when you work for yourself, because it is 24/7, because you're never away from it, are you? You can't really switch on your out of office, and I don't think anybody does, because I think we're not really a tech free culture, are we? It's always there, it's always on, we're always available. So
and when you sorry, I was just going to say, and when you love what you do, it's really hard to switch off. And I think that everybody needs to switch off, whether you're in, whether you're working for yourself or whether you're in a corporate world. I believe that holidays or breaks are really, really important as well to self-confidence, because you might not even realize that you need a break. But how refreshed are you when you actually do take a bit of time? So I think that's really important. It goes back to that mental and physical health, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And how many posts, do we see on LinkedIn or on social media where people go, God, I didn't realize I quite needed that break as much as I did. Yeah. And I'm a massive subscriber to the time out. And I know when I was employed and we could buy holiday, I prided myself on the fact that I was always the first person to hand in the holiday form to say, can I buy more holiday in the whole company? I was like, that's me winning right there. Just winning
I
totally.
love it.
So, tell us a little bit then about how confidence is impacted when you're working with people through a change transformation process.
Yeah, really fundamental. So, as human beings, we are all processing change at a different speed, dependent on our context, our experience. And I often refer to the Kubler Ross Change Curve. I don't know whether you're familiar
Yeah,
with it,
yeah.
but we all go through this curve, whether it's unwanted or wanted change. And we bounce around this curve dependent on our data, our context, our emotions, what we're hearing, the conversation, all of that stuff. So I think in any change process or program, you've got to really appreciate that everybody is in that curve at a different point in time. And
Yeah.
so giving people time to process the change is really, really important. And I think this comes out really clearly when you're actually working with an executive team through a change program. They've probably had 12 months of this conversation at the top table, right? By the time the communication goes out to the broader organization, they've probably been talking about this stuff for 12 months. And then they're at one end of the Kubler Ross and everybody else is at the beginning. So I think giving people the time to process, understanding and meeting people where they're at, and then helping to paint the picture of the future. People care about what's in it for them. And
Yeah.
the more as a leader you can understand that, the more as an individual that you can tap into what's going on for me personally, the easier that journey through a change happens. So I don't know whether I've gone off on a tangent there, Gail, but I think that is everybody processes change and transformation at a different speed. Understanding where people are at and how you help take them on that change journey is really important.
Yeah, and your point as well about, and I think this is something that I hear a lot that we probably forget, or people at the top forget, is that when they've been discussing it for the last year, they're probably further along the change curve. And we'll add a link to the change curve in the show notes so people can see. But they're obviously further along, whereas the people that are just hearing about it are right at the top. For those people that maybe aren't familiar with it, could you describe, I'm putting you right on the spot here, the stages, briefly, sort of the stages that people would go through?
Yeah, so there's kind of you start on one side and you're kind of like in kind of a you're in steady state, right? And then all of a sudden you hear about the communication or the change and the rationale for change, and then all of a sudden you go into this deep dip of, oh my God, what does it mean for me? The sky's falling in and you end up at the bottom of this curve where you're kind of like in panic mode, and that's where you're kind of really thinking about all of the worst case scenario things. This is the time when you're actually, the narrative you're telling yourself, the stories that you're creating in your own mind are at their most active, and the rumor mill is really fueling that, and it's all fiction stuff, right? And it's your own fiction that you've
Yeah.
created. And so then the more data, the more information, the more you talk about it, the more facts that you're processing, you then start to come out the other side. So that's when you kind of come up the other side of the curve, and the more information and the more you can kind of build your own self-confidence, say, right, okay, I understand now what it means for me. I understand the benefits. I understand what the implications, if we don't do this, what's going to happen. You come up the other side, and then you're in a normalized state then, right, until the next change happens, or the next, and then you go back again. So we bounce around this curve all the time. It's
Yeah.
just life.
Yeah.
But
And
having
no, go on.
but just having the appreciation as a human being that you do bounce around this curve, and actually as a leader that everybody is bouncing around this curve is really important, because actually what you want to do is to understand, where are we today as a collective, and how do we move through this curve together?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was reflecting on what you were just saying about kind of, the worst case scenarios where we go to, and I've been there, and I'm sure lots of people that do that, this kind of, the stories we're telling ourselves, the rumor mill that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
This is where I guess our inner critic is most active.
Imposter syndrome is like all
Totally.
over it, right?
Yeah.
It's like you personalize it, your emotions are in there. Talking about recipes, like this is like, it's all happening at once. This cake is totally out of
So
control. So
it's like
yeah,
chuck everything in cake, isn't it?
you're putting everything in there.
Yeah, and they're all the things that I would call confidence demons, right? So they're all the things that will, your inner critic, the rumors, you believe in others. But then I guess for a certain part of it, this is your reality. So whilst it's
Exactly.
worst case scenario, it's what you're going through at
Yep.
that time. And like you say, you think you're doing really well, and then suddenly there's a curveball that comes in that throws you back into that space again. How how would you advise people to, I guess, manage some of that and those feelings and those stories that they're hearing or telling themselves?
Yeah. So you will hear me often say, what is fact and what is fiction?
Mm.
And literally just writing those two columns down is a game changer. Because I think, so that's my first thing. Is it fact or is it fiction?
Yeah.
Um, if you don't know the answer, then you need to seek clarity. So
Mm.
asking the questions, being curious, having the courage to actually get the facts and understand the rationale for change is really important. And then you can actually base then your next steps, your actions around facts versus the fiction. And that actually sounds really, really simple, but it's really, really difficult sometimes because of the emotions, because the people you're talking to around you. It's not always easy, but that would be my top tip.
Mm. And where have you seen this done really well? What happens when a change process is managed really well?
When it's done really well, we are co-creating the future together,
I love
right?
that.
So it's a co-creation. I mean, it's sometimes when I'm working with clients, they're kind of like, nobody likes to be done to.
Mm.
And so the more you can co-create, the more you can give people the opportunity to digest, give their contribution, the more buy-in you're going to get. Being listened to and actually being considered, and whether your opinions are taken on board or not isn't the point. You've had the opportunity to share your concerns, to share how you think it could work best. So that co-creation is when it works really, really well, and giving individuals the ownership and accountability to own the future state. So I'll often say, okay, right, we've got to paint the picture of the future, but actually everyone in this organization has to be part of building that future and helping people understand they're placing that future actually as a self-fulfilling prophecy for engaging people in the change,
Mm.
because they actually buy into it. So that's when it's done really well. And there are organizations that I've worked with that have done it incredibly well. There are others that have, it's this is what we're doing, and everyone get on the bus
Yeah.
or don't,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
self-select, and that's
Mm.
that's when it's not, that's not when it's not done well.
And I'm really curious to know how you manage your own confidence in this, because this is if you take a step back from, I don't mean to scare you or anything, but if you take a step back from this, like, this is people's lives, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
know when I've been involved in things like this, we're talking about the impact on people. So not even just their confidence, but everything that they know and they believe in,
Yeah.
probably. So how do you manage your own state of confidence when you're working through a really difficult program?
Uh, it's always about the facts. Right, I go back to the facts. It's, there are some really difficult business decisions that need to be made. If we need to cut costs and we need to redesign an organization, we need to take out headcount costs. Of course, people's livelihoods are impacted, and that's, no one does that lightly. But when it is a genuine business need, as long as I can kind of anchor myself in the facts, and as long as then the process that we go through is fair and consistent, and we're doing all of the right things to mitigate as much as possible the negative impact on individuals, then that's how I kind of stay true to my core values in the process. Then I'm confident in terms of what we're leading for. I think the important thing around any impact to another human being is, and I've always led this way, is that treat others as you wish to be treated, and also how they would like to be treated. So it's not just about your perception of how they want to be treated, but actually, what do they expect? What does a good experience look like for those individuals? And just being really open and transparent.
Yeah, and
That's
hard as well, isn't it? They've been
really
really,
hard.
yeah,
Really
yeah.
hard. But I think, again, one of my core values is being human. And I think that's the thing, having a human conversation with somebody and supporting somebody through any change isn't actually that difficult to do if you actually treat them as a human being. And as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I've given that individual the support I can give them, then that's the best you can do.
What kind of support is generally offered in a program like this to individuals that are going through? I mean, the change here could be reapplying, like we've said, reapplying. It could be redundancy. It might not even be that they're directly involved, but they can still be impacted by that change. So I'm interested to know kind of what support would be available in a good process.
Yeah, in a good process. So it depends on what the change is, right? It doesn't always need to be people who are exiting a business. It could be that we're changing our strategy and we're changing roles. And so it can be both ends of the spectrum. So I think if any good change program offers the opportunity to be really clear on the rationale for change, understand the process that we're going through. There's training, there's building awareness of the change, there's making sure that people have the skills and the experience required to be or act in a different way or behave in a different way. So the training and all of that stuff is fundamentally important. If you're kind of, if you're changing the direction of an organization strategically, you've got to make sure that you've got the skills and the experience to actually deliver on the strategy, right? So that type of stuff. If you're looking at change where it's more of an issue, employee assistance programs are very popular and in today's world. There's often lots of these support systems available, but employees don't necessarily always leverage them. It blows my mind that organizations invest in these employee assistance programs, yet not many employees take them up. So things like that. I think, of course, having conversation doesn't even have to cost any money, but making sure that you are in tune with each other and communicating through any change is number one.
I think the EAP programs, the employee assistance programs, are really interesting, aren't they? And I'd be really really wondering why people don't use them, because conversations are great, right? But if you're an employee in a situation where change is happening around you, sometimes you might not want to have a conversation with somebody in that business that is orchestrating the change or is responsible in your mind for that change.
Yeah.
Whereas these EAPs can often offer an unbiased view, a little bit like a coach would,
Confidential.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
They often have yeah, it's confidential. They have qualified practitioners in all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
expert areas. The other thing that works from a change and transformation perspective is I've got a change maker leadership program that I work with, and that's actually building skills and experience internally as for internal change makers. So building the skills and experiences of people that will champion the change through an organization. So, you know, we work there with making sure that people have got great resilience, that they've got skills that they are able to then breed those skills and experiences internally. So it's not, you know, I think I posted the other day about, you know, these organizations that have change departments and things like that. Well, okay, great, but that's actually not particularly helpful. Actually, in the dynamic worlds that we work in, creating internal change strength is fundamental, and actually they are leadership skills. You know,
Yeah.
that's what is helpful. So creating those internal change champions is incredibly powerful, and that's when an organization really does it well, that they take leaders in a business, they upskill them in change and transformation. You know, that's a massive strength.
Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of what level would those people be in the business, or could they be anybody?
Anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody. So, you know, I've worked with creating change makers at the executive leadership level, line leaders, team members. I mean, the more it's just a general skill that every human being, I think, can benefit from. To your point, it's not just changing in a business, but changing your personal life. You know,
Yeah.
knowing how to build your own resilience, knowing how to communicate and articulate things in a way that's really succinct and helps you influence other people. Yeah, there's a whole kit bag there that's relevant for everybody.
And I think like change is the only thing that's constant around us, isn't it? Everything's changing all the time. And I know I've definitely used, because the Kubler Ross curve was originally developed for grief, wasn't it? For
It
loss.
was,
But
yes.
actually
Yeah,
that loss, if you think about it, could be anything. You know,
yeah,
it applies to so many
it
situations that I
does.
do whip it out every now and then, because I think sometimes it helps people to go, oh God, you know what, that's okay. That thing that I'm feeling here and here and
It's
that I'm going
normal.
backwards and forwards is all normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's a great top tip as well? It can be a catalyst. That one diagram can be a catalyst in a team environment for actually really understanding where a team are. So, you know, collectively, let's just plot, where are you today on this curve? And that generates the conversation and the dialogue, and then you know, you open up vulnerability in a confidential place where you can actually talk about, I'm actually right here, like I'm actually in the down in the ditches at the worst possible point, help me.
Yeah, and I've done that. I facilitated a session many
Yeah,
years ago now. It was a change in a department, and I put the curve up on the wall, and
yeah,
everybody plotted themselves. And then we did another session where we talked about kind of what resilience skills have they got that they can use
yes,
that will bring, and actually some of it was around your tip around fact or fiction. And I think I did it kind of what can I control and what can't I control.
that's it, control the controllables.
Exactly.
Yeah,
One of my favorite. I think that might have come up in every single podcast that I've
yeah,
done. So I know we've talked briefly about tips, and you said, you know, your fact or fiction, control the controllable, catalyst, which could be, you know, looking at that Kubler-Ross curve and saying, where am I? How do I? But if you are listening to this as somebody who has experienced change in the workplace, what would be your advice then to them? What other three top tips do you have for them?
I think taking time to understand where you're at and what you need is number one.
Yeah.
And then understanding what's available around you that you can leverage. So is it a conversation with your line leader? Is it the EAP? Is it talking to colleagues? Is it creating a change maker group? Actually taking charge. Lots of times I suggest leaning into what can I do, and being proactive with that is often incredibly valuable, because it helps you move around. It helps you move in the change curve, but it also role models to others what's possible. And I think my third thing would be to be open-minded and curious. Ask the questions. Why are we doing it? Why haven't we thought about this? What if we did blah de blah? I think there's something incredibly powerful for people to build on an idea. It's really easy to sit as an individual contributor or any human being and criticize something.
Yeah. And we're all good at that, right?
We're all good at that. We do it enough to ourselves, let alone everything else around us. So it's easy to critique, but I think the invitation is to actually, rather than critique, actually think about, well, what could help move this situation forward? What could I do that would actually build on this idea? Maybe what are the things that I'm not hearing from the communication that we're getting, or the rationale for change? There's a bit that's missing. Well, actually, it's really important. So how can I do something about that? It's that taking action.
Yeah, and for me, that's where the link is with the confidence in this, right? It's about taking action. And when you said fact or fiction, I use that loads with clients in terms of, what are the actual facts of this situation? Let's just separate the facts from the emotion for a second, take a step back and look at that. And I think where you've just said, even though those points, even in the context of somebody who's self-employed, working for themselves, whatever, in a smaller business, they all apply, don't they? Take the time to think about where you're at, and how do you do that, and where do you need to do that, and who can help you with that, and then what's available, because there's always stuff available out there, isn't there, to leverage?
Always.
And information is power, and for me, that is where then the confidence builds in. Do you know what? I'm okay. This is going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And I think just on that point, one of the most powerful things is thinking about who you can leverage in that process, right? Who are your people? Who are your tribe? Who are the people that are going to help you to take action and move forward? I'm a real believer in moving something forward, and whether that is you're going forward because unfortunately it's a negative change situation for you personally. Well, okay, well, it is what it is, but what can I do? Or whether it's an exciting positive change and transformation where I've got an opportunity to play bigger. Well, who can I speak to in terms of to support me in that? Because the one thing, and I believe this through my soul, is that there are amazing people all around you that want to help.
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot. So at the beginning of this series, there is a recording about the confidence iceberg, and there's also a video on my YouTube channel as well, but one of them is about your environment and about the people that you surround yourself with, and
Absolutely.
who are those people that can help you.
Yes. I call it like your personal board. Right.
Totally.
It's who are those people? Who are your people that you can pick up the phone to and have a conversation and ask for help? So that's what the self-reflection thing is really important, because you need to understand what you need to fill your cup so that you can ask the question of others.
Amazing.
I think that you'll agree, right? When we set up our businesses back in 2019, one of the things that, and how we kind of got talking was that there are so many people that are willing to help you if you just ask.
Yeah, totally. And I think we probably first met, I think maybe at a LinkedIn local, met actually face to face, didn't we? Before lockdown, I think.
Yes.
Because we've been on this kind of similar journey. So massive change there, I think, for both of us, is fair to say.
Yeah.
And I think that the people that I surround myself with, and you'll be the same, are the people that make this change more bearable when it could be
Yeah.
so difficult.
And make it fun, right? Even in the
Yeah.
most horrendous change situation, you've got a choice of how you respond to it.
Totally, yeah.
And you can, it's a choice,
Yeah.
and I think that is, even, in the worst situation, you've always got a choice of how you respond.
Yeah.
Um,
And like you say, it's about taking that step back and recognizing what you need. And if actually what you do need is to make a choice, then that feels like a really good situation to be in, doesn't it?
yeah,
That actually I just need to, but I might need somebody to help me work through those choices.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, Tina, thank you. That's been really interesting. I really love talking about it, and also how because I know mainly you work with organizations, but then thinking about how that flips into kind of, whether you're self-employed or actually it's something in your personal life, the tips remain the same for
They
me.
do. They
So
do. It's yeah, it's true.
yeah, so if people want to find out more about you, want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, so Tina Jennings on LinkedIn. I'm there, and or they can visit my website, which is kosankroger.com. We'll have to put that in the show
We
notes.
will, yeah.
It's just so it's the Irish listeners will know it is Irish for brave path. And there's a story behind that selection of name, but we'll save that for another day.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Next series, the behind what's behind the business name. But well, I mean, Brave Path says, I'm sure we can all relate to that kind of brave path that we need to take or we've taken. And
Yeah,
actually what we can take from that brave path that we did last time into the next time something happens as well. But yeah,
it,
we'll definitely pop all your contact details in the show notes. Tina, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you
you're
for joining
welcome.
us.
Thank you, Gail.
So that's it for this episode. So join us next time on the Confidence Conversations podcast.